To understand what suspended chords are, how they work and how to actually use them in chord progressions, we need to look at any major or minor chord first. Let's take a C major for example. Now, like any major chord, it's built up with the first, third and fifth note of the major scale. And if we look at the C minor chord, it's built up with the first, flattened third and fifth note. Flattened means this third most down by a half step. Now notice it's the third of the chord that turns it into a major or a minor. They both build with the root and fifth, plus either the third, we call it a major third, which turns a chord into a major, or a flattened third, we call it a minor third, which turns a chord into a minor. Now the sus chord, on the other hand, doesn't have any kind of third. Instead, it replaces it with either the second or the fourth note. So if we take a C major chord and we take this third out and we move it to the second note, we'll get a C sus2 chord. And if we move it to the fourth note, we'll get a C sus4 chord. So they also build with root, fifth, plus either the second or the fourth, omitting the third. And that replacement of the third is what makes the sus chord so unique. It creates a sense of ambiguity, because now the chord is neither major nor minor, neither happy nor sad. It has more open, mysterious, sort of floaty sound now. It also creates a sense of tension and unresolved sound, because there is no third in the chord. And that makes the chord sort of unsettled. It makes it tensed, and it feels like it wants to move somewhere to a more stable sound. In other words, it wants to resolve. And typically it resolves back to the original major or minor chord. Or a minor. But it's not always the case. We don't necessarily have to resolve sus chords. We'll look at that in a moment. We'll look at how we actually use sus chords in chord progressions. But this is what suspended chords are. The chords where the third is replaced with either the second or the fourth note, which makes them suspended, unsettled, and gives them this mysterious, more open sound. And sus, it's an abbreviation for suspended. So there are two types of sus chords, sus2 and sus4. Sus4 also can be notated as sus. So if you see a sus without any number, it means you play sus4. Now, before we look at how we can use sus chords in chord progressions to make them more interesting, we need to learn how to construct them, how we can easily build them in any key. There are two ways we can do that. So let's say we want to build a B flat sus2 or a B flat sus4. The first way is to take a B flat major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and basically 1 again. And now you just use the scale degrees. If you want to play a B flat sus4, you use the first, fourth, and fifth degrees of the scale. And to play B flat sus2, you use first, second, and fifth notes of the scale. And this of course applies to any key. Or you can simply take a B flat major chord, and now you move the third to the fourth note, or you move it to the second note. When you know your major scales, a B flat major scale in this example, these notes, they're kind of highlighted. You look at the keyboard and you can instantly see them. And so that's the approach you obviously use, because it's simple in that case. But what if you don't know your major scales? Well, you still can work it out pretty easily. You just need to know a major chord. So take a B flat major chord. Now, to build a B flat sus4, take the third and move it half step up. In other words, you just move this third to the next closest note above. Sometimes it's going to be a black note, sometimes it's going to be a white note, so don't let it confuse you. Now, to build a B flat sus2, you move the third 2 half steps down. So here's the third, you move it 1 half step, another 1 half step, and here you have it. Let's try another key, say E major for example. Now, to build an E sus4, take the third and move it to the next note. Now, to build an E sus2, back to the chord, take this G sharp and move it 1 half step, another 1 half step, and we have it. So remember, major, minor, sus2 and sus4 chords, they are all built with the root and fifth. And now it's all about the middle note. If you want to build a major chord, you add the third, minor chord, flat in third, sus2, second note, sus4, fourth note. So how do we use sus chords in a chord progression? There are two ways. We can add sus chords to the chord progression, or we can substitute existing chords with the sus chords. Let's look at the first way. Say we have a progression like this. C major to E minor to F major to a G major. And now we can insert a sus2 or sus4 chord before any of these chords, before any major or minor chord in a chord progression. So let's check it out. So before I played a C major, I added a C sus2, and then I resolved back to the original chord. Next, E minor, I added E sus4, and then I resolved back to the E minor. Next I played F sus2, and I resolved to the original chord. And then G sus4, and I resolved then to the original chord, to the G major. Now, of course, you don't necessarily have to add sus chords before every single chord in a chord progression, though you absolutely can, but I'm just showing you options, and I encourage you to experiment. So try to add sus2 or sus4 chords before any major or minor chord in a chord progression, and just see how it sounds. Let me give you another one example. Let's say we have a progression like this. C major, B flat major, F major. What if we add a C sus4 to the end before we circle back to the C major? Technically, it should create a brief sense of tension, a sense of anticipation before it resolves back to the C major chord. Let's check it out. Sounds good? Here is another one example. Let's say you stay on a chord for a long time. You can throw a quick sus. You also can move back and forth. Original chord, sus, original chord, sus. Pretty common thing on guitar. So this is the one way of using sus chords. We add them to a chord progression, and then they resolve back to the original major or minor chord. Another way is to substitute existing chords with the sus chords. So say we have a progression like this. We can substitute any of these chords with the sus chords. So let's replace a G major with a G sus4, and maybe an F major with an F sus2. Let's see how it sounds. So much prettier. So we went from this to this. Now, if you are wondering how is this and F sus2, well, this and F sus2, right? First, second, fifth, and we just put the first on top, this F. We just invert the chord. We can invert sus chords, of course, like any other chord. Now, I cheated a little bit. I played A minor 7 instead of a regular A minor, but it's not important for now. Now, notice we don't resolve a G sus4 chord. Instead, we move to A minor. And by not resolving sus chords, we add a different flavor to the chord progression. So, whenever you play a chord progression, try to substitute any major or minor chord with either a sus2 or sus4 and just see how it sounds. Experiment a little and have some fun with it. That's it for today, and I'll see you in the next lesson.